A bolter round punches through ceramic armor and detonates inside the chest cavity, terrifying. A lascannon melts through the hull of a battle tank in a single sustained beam, devastating. A Titan's volcano cannon carves a trench through an entire battalion in one sweep, turning 300 soldiers into a smoldering black scar across the earth, apocalyptic. But none of those are what we are here to talk about today. Those are the small arms fire of a galaxy that has been screaming for over 10,000 years, background noise. The ordinary, everyday methods by which the 41st millennium grinds through its billions of dead. Today we go further, past the chain swords, past the power fists, past the mighty god machines that shake continents with every thundering stride. Today, we are talking about the weapons that kill planets, the weapons that devour stars, the weapons that tear open the skin of reality and let the howling madness of another dimension come flooding through like an ocean of teeth and fire, the weapons that can break the laws of physics themselves if the wrong hand touches the wrong trigger at the wrong moment, in the wrong place. These are the instruments that Inquisitors discuss in locked chambers beneath miles of solid rock. The devices that make chapter masters abandon entire campaign strategies rather than risk their deployment. The horrors that the Emperor of Mankind himself prepared contingencies for, contingencies that meant destroying Terra itself rather than allowing certain forces to be unleashed. Some of these weapons were forged by the Imperium. Some were born in the screaming depths of the warp. Some belonged to alien civilizations so impossibly ancient and so far beyond human comprehension that we cannot even describe their operating principles, much less dream of replicating them. But every single one shares a common truth. They represent the absolute outer boundary of destruction, the threshold where warfare ceases to be warfare and becomes something closer to cosmic annihilation. We are counting down 10 of them, the 10 most dangerous weapons in the entire Warhammer 40,000 universe, starting at number 1 and building towards something so overwhelmingly terrifying that it makes the death of whole worlds look like a preliminary exercise. Here we go. Number 1. Virus bombs. We begin with something that perfectly captures everything the Imperium of Man is about, at its absolute worst. A weapon so fundamentally vile, so stomach-turningly horrific, that even the brutal, callous leadership of humanity's galactic empire eventually decided it was maybe a bit much. And then they kept using it anyway, just not as often. The virus bomb is a biological weapon of mass destruction that deploys a genetically engineered pathogen called the Life Eater virus. The name tells you everything you need to know. It eats life, all life, every kind, every form, every cell of every organism on an entire planet. It does not distinguish between soldier and civilian, between a mighty predator and the bacteria living in the soil beneath its feet. If it is organic, the Life Eater virus will find it, infect it, and reduce it to a thick bubbling soup of dead matter in a time frame that barely registers on a clock. Here is how a virus bomb attack works. The weapons are deployed from warships in orbit, fired down into the planet's atmosphere in massive salvos. The bombs burst open at high altitude, dispersing their payload in aerosolized form across the widest possible area. When full orbital coverage is achieved, with multiple ships launching simultaneously from different positions around the planet, the virus saturates the entire atmosphere in a matter of minutes, not hours, not days, minutes. From the moment those bombs crack open to the moment the last living cell on the planet stops functioning, the whole process can be over before you have time to fully understand what is happening. The Life Eater virus is engineered to be impossibly efficient. It can penetrate sealed environment suits. It eats through the joints of power armor. It has been recorded as capable of being keyed to specific genetic codes targeting particular species or even particular genetic traits within a species. One variant was reportedly able to target humans with a predominant hair color. That is an absurd level of precision for something designed to wipe out all life on a planet, but it demonstrates just how sophisticated the genetic engineering behind the virus really is. Once the virus gets inside a living organism, it triggers a process called violent lysis. The cells of the victim tear themselves apart from the inside. Flesh begins to slough off the bones within seconds. The nervous system collapses. organs liquefy. Bones dissolve into jelly. The entire body is reduced to a thick, putrid slurry of dead biological matter in less time than it takes to scream. And that scream does not last very long at all. On a planetary scale, forests that took thousands of years to grow collapse and melt into vast lakes of organic sludge. Cities full of millions of people become nothing more than enormous puddles of biological waste, with the skeletons of buildings and vehicles jutting up out of the muck like the ribs of some colossal dead animal. But the virus bomb is not finished yet, not even close, because all of that rapid decomposition produces absolutely enormous quantities of flammable gas. Methane, primarily, mixed with other volatile compounds that are released when billions of tons of organic matter break down simultaneously. The gas builds and builds, filling the atmosphere until the entire planet is wrapped in a blanket of volatile fumes. And then it ignites. Sometimes the ignition happens naturally, through spontaneous chemical reactions in the superheated, gas-saturated air. Sometimes the people who drop the virus bombs send down an incendiary device to light the fuse on purpose. Either way, the result is the same: a firestorm. A planet-wide firestorm that burns everything that the virus did not already dissolve. Every remaining scrap of organic material is consumed by the flames. The oceans boil away into steam. The atmosphere itself burns off into the void of space. And when the fire finally dies, after hours or days of sustained conflagration, all that remains is bare, scorched bedrock. No atmosphere, no water, no soil, no life. Just a ball of glass and stone, floating silently in the void, never to support life again, without thousands of years of atmospheric recovery that the Imperium does not have the technology to provide. Most infamous use of virus bombs in the entire history of Warhammer 40,000 was at the Battle of Isstvan III. This was the moment when everything changed. This was the moment when Horus Lupercal, the War Master of the Imperium, the Emperor's most trusted and beloved son, revealed his betrayal and lit the fuse on the greatest civil war humanity has ever known. Horus had been corrupted by the dark powers of chaos, turned against his father through a combination of manipulation, sorcery, and the poisoned whisper of the anathame blade, which we will discuss in our very next entry. But before he could openly rebel, he needed to deal with a problem. Within his own legion and the 3 other legions under his command, there were thousands of space marines who would never betray the Emperor, loyal warriors who would fight and die for the Imperium no matter what. Horus needed them gone, so he set a trap. Under the pretense of putting down a planetary rebellion on Isstvan III, Horus deployed nearly 100,000 space marines onto the surface. These were the Loyalists, the men he and his fellow traitor Primarchs had identified as too devoted to the Emperor to be turned. They were sent down to fight what they believed was a routine compliance action. They had no idea what was coming. Once the Loyalists were fully committed on the ground, with their communications to the fleet cut off and their transport craft denied to them, Horus gave the order. The great battleships of the combined traitor fleet descended into low orbit. The Vengeful Spirit, the Conqueror, the Andronius, the Firebird. Bomb racks opened. Macro cannon batteries unleashed salvo after salvo of shells into the atmosphere below, and the deadly cargo those shells carried was the life-eater virus. 16 billion people lived on Isstvan III before that bombardment. Normal, ordinary human beings going about their lives on a world that had only recently been brought into the Imperial fold. In minutes, every single one of them was dead. The virus consumed the entire biosphere of the planet, in what might be the single most concentrated act of mass murder in the history of the galaxy. The firestorm that followed burned the world clean, reducing everything on the surface to scorched, lifeless rock. But the Loyalist Space Marines were harder to kill than ordinary humans, much harder. Thanks to last-minute warnings from brothers who had remained loyal aboard the fleet, many of the Marines on the surface managed to seal themselves inside bunkers and fortified positions before the virus hit. Their enhanced physiology, the sealed systems of their power armor, and the protection of hastily resealed underground structures gave them just barely enough of a chance to survive. When the firestorm died down, and the traitors scanned the surface expecting to find nothing but ashes, they were stunned to discover that roughly 2/3 of the Loyalists were still alive. What followed was one of the most desperate battles in the history of the Imperium. The surviving loyalists emerged from their shelters into a dead, ash-covered world and fought a 3-month last stand against the traitor forces that Horus sent down to finish the job. The Primarch Angron himself descended to the surface against orders, eager to kill his former brothers with his own hands. The loyalists knew there was no rescue coming, no extraction, no hope of survival. But they fought anyway. They fought because it was right. They fought because the Emperor deserved better than what Horus was doing. And they fought because every day they held on was another day bought for Captain Nathaniel Garrow to escape aboard the frigate Eisenstein and carry word of the betrayal to Terra. The Loyalists were eventually overwhelmed, but they made Horus pay dearly for every inch of scorched ground. The 3-month battle cost the traitor legions enormous casualties and delayed the start of the broader heresy, a delay that may well have saved the Imperium by giving the Loyalist forces time to prepare. In the millennia after the heresy, the Imperium largely replaced virus bombs with cyclonic torpedoes as the preferred method of exterminatus. But virus bombs were never completely retired. They were used as late as the 273rd year of the 41st millennium on the hive world of Stalinvast, following a genstealer infestation. And the world of Talan, virus-bombed by the Iron Warriors during the heresy, remains a desert wasteland to this day, its once verdant surface permanently scarred by the Life Eater's touch. Perhaps the most remarkable postscript to the Isstvan III story came millennia later when the ancient dreadnought Rylanor, one of the last survivors of the original atrocity, set a trap for his own former Primarch Fulgrim. Fulgrim had long since fallen to chaos and ascended to become a demon prince of Slaanesh. Using a sonic beacon to lure the demon Primarch back to Isstvan III, Rylanor detonated an unexploded virus bomb that had lain dormant since the original bombardment. Once again, all life that had slowly recolonized the surface of the dead world was scoured away. But even the Life Eater virus could not destroy a demon Primarch. Fulgrim burned, but his essence reformed from the cinders, held together by the power of the dark gods. Some things are beyond even the most terrible weapons humanity has ever made. Number 2. The anathame. Not every weapon that changes the course of history needs to be massive. Not every instrument of destruction needs to wipe out cities or crack continents. Sometimes the most dangerous weapon in the galaxy is barely larger than a knife. A simple blade with a flint edge and a golden hilt, looking like something you might find in a museum of ancient artifacts, rather than on a battlefield where demigods wage war. The anathame does not look like a weapon that could topple an empire, but that is exactly what it did. The anathame was created by a xenos species called the Kinebrak, a race of simian-like humanoid aliens who had long ago integrated into a multi-species civilization known as the Interrex. The Interrex were remarkable because they represented everything the Imperium of Man was not. They were cosmopolitan, where the Imperium was xenophobic. They were cooperative, where the Imperium was authoritarian. And most importantly, they were fully aware of the existence of chaos, which they called chaos, and they had built their entire society around the principle of guarding against its corruption. The Kinebrak had a complicated history with the forces of chaos, and during that history they had created weapons infused with the power of the dark gods. The anathame was one of these weapons, a blade saturated with the essence of the chaos god Nurgle. The Interrex understood how dangerous these weapons were. They kept them locked away in a secure facility called the Hall of Devices on the world of Zenobia, a combination museum and vault dedicated to preserving dangerous artifacts under strict guard. It was the responsible thing to do, the careful thing, the smart thing, and it would have worked perfectly if not for one man, Erebus, first chaplain of the Word-Bearers Legion, secret servant of the Chaos Gods, liar, manipulator, and arguably the single most hated character in the entire Warhammer 40,000 setting. Not because he is the strongest or the most physically imposing, but because he is the one person most responsible for the Horus Heresy, the civil war that nearly destroyed the Imperium and plunged the galaxy into 10,000 years of darkness. Erebus had already corrupted his own Primarch, Lorgar, turning the Word-Bearers from the Emperor's most devoted worshippers into the First Legion to fully embrace chaos. Now he had his sights set on a much bigger target, the War Master Horus himself. and he needed the anathame to make it happen. While Horus and his lunar wolves were engaged in diplomatic negotiations with the Interrex, hoping to bring this advanced civilization into the Imperium peacefully, Erebus slipped away from the diplomatic delegation, broke into the Hall of Devices, stole the anathame, and rigged the building with explosives to cover his escape. The Interrex, understandably, assumed they had been betrayed by the Imperials. The fragile peace shattered. War erupted. The Interrex were destroyed. An entire civilization wiped out because one treacherous space marine needed a cursed knife. The anathame had a unique and terrifying property that made it the perfect weapon for what Erebus had planned. If a target's name was spoken to the blade, the weapon became molecularly lethal to that specific individual. It would generate poisons and toxins tailored precisely to their biology. It would bypass any immune system, any healing factor, any enhanced physiology, and it would guide itself toward its target with an almost supernatural precision, as if the blade itself was hungry for a specific throat. Erebus passed the anathame along to Eugen Temba, the former imperial planetary governor of Davin, who had been corrupted by the chaos god Nurgle. When Horus led his legion to Davin to deal with Temba's rebellion, the corrupted governor whispered the War Master's name to the anathame and attacked. In the fighting that followed, Temba managed to inflict only a single cut on Horus before the Primarch killed him. One shallow wound on the left shoulder, a scratch, nothing more. But the anatheme's poison was unlike anything a Primarch had ever faced. Horus's enhanced biology could not fight it. His Laraman cells, the specialized blood-clotting agents that allowed space marines to survive wounds that would kill ordinary men, simply stopped working. The toxins would not clear. The wound would not close. The greatest warrior in the Imperium, the Emperor's favorite son, was dying from what should have been an insignificant injury. This was exactly what Erebus had been counting on. With Horus on the edge of death and his inner circle frantic with desperation, Erebus whispered a suggestion. "The Serpent Lodge on Davin," he said. "The local priests had healing knowledge that might save the War Master." The suggestion was taken, and inside the lodge, while Horus lay comatose between life and death, Erebus and the Chaos Gods went to work on his mind. They showed him visions of a future where the Emperor had abandoned the Great Crusade for a secret project beneath the Imperial Palace. A future where the Primarchs were cast aside. A future where the Imperium became a theocratic nightmare. The visions were technically true, but the crucial detail that Horus himself would bring this future into being by choosing to fall was conveniently left out. Horus woke up healed, and he woke up corrupted. The loyal son of the Emperor was gone. In his place stood a man consumed by bitterness, jealousy, and the burning certainty that his father had betrayed him. The Chaos Gods had shown him exactly what he needed to see, exactly when he was most vulnerable, exactly in the way that would do the most damage. And the wound that had opened the door to all of it, the wound that had put Horus in that coma and given the ruinous powers their chance, had been inflicted by a single blade the size of a large knife, a weapon that looked like it belonged in a museum, a weapon that should never have left the display case where the Interrex had been keeping it safe. The irony is devastating. The Interrex had known about chaos. They had understood the threat. They had built their entire civilization around the principle of containing and guarding against exactly this kind of corruption. They had the anathame locked away specifically because they understood what a chaos-tainted weapon could do in the wrong hands, and it was stolen from under their noses by a chaplain who had already fallen to the very enemy the Interrex had spent centuries defending against. The Imperium, which claimed to be humanity's best hope for survival, was infiltrated by chaos to such a degree that a chaos agent could walk into the most secure facility of an allied civilization and walk out with a weapon that would doom the galaxy. And the Imperium did not even know what chaos was. The greatest civil war in human history had begun because one man stole one knife and whispered one name. Before the Battle of Calth, Erebus took the original anathame and struck 8 shards from it, creating smaller daggers called athames that retained a portion of the original blade's power. These shards could cut through reality itself, opening doorways into the warp that allowed instantaneous travel across vast distances. They could even allow travel through time, though this was discovered by accident. One shard was used by Cor Phaeron, the word-bearer's Dark Cardinal, to stab Robout Guilliman during their duel at Calth. Cor Phaeron tried to use the blade to turn Guilliman to chaos, but the Ultramarines Primarch resisted the corruption, fought off the blade's influence, and nearly killed Cor Phaeron in the counterattack. In more recent lore, following the fall of Cadia and the opening of the Great Rift, the forces of Chaos have been gathering the scattered shards of the original anathame, working to reforge them into a single weapon. The blade that started the heresy may not be finished with the galaxy yet, and given what it accomplished the first time, that thought should keep everyone awake at night. Number 3. Vortex weapons. There are a lot of terrible ways to die in Warhammer 40,000. You can be eaten alive by Tyranids. You can have your soul ripped out by a daemon. You can be slowly dissolved by the acid blood of a genstealer. But there is a strong argument that the single worst fate that can befall any living thing in the galaxy is being caught by a vortex weapon. Because a vortex weapon does not just kill you. It does not just destroy your body. It removes you from existence, completely, totally, irrevocably. Not even your atoms survive the experience. Vortex weapons operate on a principle that is as simple as it is terrifying. They use technology derived from the same systems that allow Imperial starships to enter the warp for faster-than-light travel. When a ship activates its warp drive, it opens a controlled breach between real space and the immaterium, the nightmare dimension that exists alongside the material universe. The ship is protected by Geller fields that keep the horrors of the warp from getting inside and eating the crew. A vortex weapon does essentially the same thing, except there is no ship, there is no Geller field, there is no control whatsoever. There is just a raw, screaming tear ripped in the fabric of reality, and anything that touches it is gone. The physics, if you can even call them that, are absolute. Matter, energy, flesh, ceramite, adamantium, void shields. It does not matter what you are made of. Anything that comes into contact with the vortex is sucked through the breach and into the warp, where it is consumed by the raw, undifferentiated stuff of the immaterium. It is not converted. It is not stored. It is dissolved into the fundamental substrate of chaos itself, broken down into the screaming, formless energy that makes up the nightmare dimension. Nothing comes back. Nothing survives. There is no wreckage, no debris, no bodies, just a void where something used to be, like a bite taken out of reality. Vortex weapons come in many sizes. The smallest is the Vortex Grenade, a sphere about the size of a man's fist that can be thrown by hand. Despite its compact size, the Vortex Grenade has been classified as the most potent man-portable weapon in the galaxy, a title that it earns with every use. Even this tiny device can cripple the largest war machines and erase entire squads of elite warriors from existence in a heartbeat. Vortex grenades are so rare and so dangerous that they are only issued to the most senior Imperial agents, people like Inquisitors and Officio Assassinorum operatives, individuals who have both the authority and the training to deploy something this catastrophic without getting themselves killed in the process, although that last part is never guaranteed. Moving up the scale, there are Vortex missiles, which can be mounted on the carapace of Warlord and Imperator-class Titans, or launched from Deathstrike missile launchers. These are products of the dark age of technology, archaeotech relics from an era when humanity's understanding of science was far beyond what the Imperium can replicate today. The construction of a Vortex missile is a complex and dangerous process involving multiple stages. The first stage requires capturing and containing a spark of raw warp energy. This is done by highly skilled navigators who guide specially designated ships called divinators, dangerously close to active warp rifts. The captured energy is then transferred through several subsequent stages into a capsule that carefully insulates it from a single psi rod inside the warhead. When the missile strikes its target, the capsule is crushed, the warp energy makes contact with the rod, and a transdimensional vortex field is unleashed on the impact site. Officially, only Segmentum Command can authorize the use of vortex missiles, and the launch codes are entrusted solely to the Lord Commissar assigned to the weapon. This is deliberate. Vortex missiles are doomsday weapons, and the person with their finger on the trigger needs to be both fanatically loyal and psychologically prepared to accept the consequences of firing one. Consequences that can be catastrophic, even for the side that launched it. Because here is the thing about Vortex weapons that makes them uniquely dangerous, even compared to the other entries on this list. They are wildly, unpredictably, dangerously out of control once they are activated. A warp vortex, once created, does not sit in one spot and politely wait for enemies to wander into it. It drifts. It moves randomly across the battlefield, swallowing friend and foe with complete indifference. Sometimes the vortex shrinks and disappears after a few seconds. Sometimes it grows larger. Sometimes it splits into multiple smaller vortices. Sometimes it sustains itself on ambient warp energies and persists for extended periods, becoming a semi-permanent hazard that makes an entire region of the battlefield completely unusable for both sides. You cannot aim it after it has been created. You cannot steer it. You cannot shut it off. You can only launch it, pray that it moves in the direction you want, and hope that it fades before it eats too many of your own troops. This unpredictability has led to some truly horrific friendly fire incidents throughout Imperial history. In 899 of the 40th millennium, a Vortex missile accidentally detonated inside its own defensive emplacement on the agri-world of Thantis X. A novice tech priest had spoken the benediction ritual incorrectly during the preparation of the weapon, and the warp energy escaped containment before the missile could be launched. The resulting vortex swallowed the entire defensive position, the missile launcher, its crew, and a significant chunk of the fortifications that had been holding back an Orc invasion. Without those defenses, the planet fell, and the loss of the planet meant the loss of an entire star system's food supply, condemning millions of people on neighboring worlds to starvation. One mispronounced prayer, and millions died. That is the reality of Vortex weapons. During the Horus Heresy, Vortex missiles were used with devastating effect by the Titan legions. Warlord and Imperator-class Titans unleashed these weapons against traitor Titan legions, and the resulting battles saw entire god engines consumed by roiling spheres of warp energy, swallowed whole and erased from existence. But these epic engagements also demonstrated the terrible cost of using Vortex weapons in close quarters. The Titan Vulkan's honor, for example, was destroyed when it was consumed by a towering ball of warp energy during one such engagement. The weapon it had fired at the enemy ended up killing both the target and the Titan that had fired it. This was not an isolated incident. Vortex weapons proved as deadly to their users as to their targets in battle after battle during the Heresy, and the losses were so severe that the practice of mounting Vortex missiles on Titans became much more conservative in the millennia that followed. The Eldar have their own versions of Vortex technology, and theirs are typically more refined than the Imperial equivalents, though no less terrifying when used. Distortion Cannon, or D-Cannon, uses a miniaturized warp drive to overlay the immaterium onto a patch of real space. Anything caught in the overlap is either torn apart by the violent gravitational forces involved or dragged bodily into the warp for a fate far worse than simple death. The Wraith Cannon is a smaller, more precise version carried by Wraithguard, powered by the psychic energy of spirit stones that house the souls of dead Eldar warriors. And then there is the D-Scythe, which might be the most disturbing Vortex weapon of all. The D-Scythe does not destroy the body. It does not leave craters or burn marks or debris. Instead, it strips the soul from the victim's body, ripping it free and banishing it to the warp, while leaving the physical form completely untouched. The body simply drops, intact and unmarked, with nothing missing except the fundamental essence of the person who used to inhabit it. The Eldar call this the cutting of the crone's cord, named after the strand that their mythology says ties the soul to the body. They consider it one of the most taboo weapons in their arsenal, and its use is reserved for only the most desperate circumstances. Though as the Eldar's situation grows more desperate with each passing year, the definition of circumstances dire enough to warrant the D-Scythe keeps getting broader. Every single attempt by the Adeptus Mechanicus to study or replicate Eldar distortion technology has ended in disaster. In 755 of the 40th millennium, a group of rogue tech priests conducted in an event known as the Contagion of Eridanus, which opened a demonic incursion so severe that a Grey Knight strike force had to be dispatched to contain it. Since that incident, More stringent measures have been imposed to prevent further attempts, though knowing the Mechanicus, someone is probably trying again right now in some hidden laboratory, convinced that this time they will get it right. Number 4. Exterminatus Cyclonic Torpedoes. When everything else has failed. When the planet is lost beyond any hope of recovery. When the corruption has spread so deep that no army, no matter how large or well-equipped, could possibly root it out. When the threat posed by what remains on that world is so severe that allowing it to continue existing puts the entire Imperium at risk. In those moments, the leadership of humanity's galactic empire has one final option available to them. They call it Exterminatus, and the weapon they most commonly use to carry it out in the 41st millennium is the cyclonic torpedo. Cyclonic torpedoes are capital ship-fired warheads of truly immense size, each one roughly comparable to a skyscraper in scale. They are deployed from the torpedo bays of Imperial Navy battleships or Space Marine battle barges in low planetary orbit, and they come in a range of different configurations that employ different methods of achieving the same end result. Some use nucleonic fire, some use raw plasma bombardment, some use advanced radiation weapons whose exact functioning is classified even within the highest circles of the Mechanicus. But regardless of the specific method, the outcome is always the same: the complete destruction of all life on the planet's surface. Atmosphere burned away into the void, oceans boiled to vapor, the surface scoured down to bare bedrock, a dead world transformed into a ball of glass and stone, forever incapable of supporting life without thousands of years of atmospheric recovery that the Imperium has neither the technology nor the patience to provide. The standard cyclonic torpedo works by initiating a self-sustaining thermonuclear reaction that feeds on the planet's free oxygen. When fired in sufficient numbers and detonated simultaneously across the planetary surface from multiple orbital positions, the individual reactions combine into a single, globe-spanning inferno that engulfs the entire world. The nucleonic fires are sustained by an arcane process known only to high-ranking tech priests of the Mechanicus, a process that converts raw matter into energy with such terrifying efficiency that once the reaction reaches critical mass, it becomes self-sustaining. The bombardment only needs to get the fire started. After that, the planet essentially destroys itself. But the standard model is not even the worst variant available. For worlds that have no atmosphere or biological life to burn, such as Necron tomb worlds, the Imperium maintains a much rarer and more exotic weapon, called the two-stage cyclonic torpedo. These warheads carry a two-stage payload that is terrifying in its efficiency. The first stage is an enormously powerful melter charge that burns straight through the planet's crust and mantle, boring through miles and miles of rock and magma to reach the planetary core. The second stage is a modified cyclonic plasma charge that detonates at the core itself, destabilizing it so catastrophically that the planet physically tears itself apart from the inside. The world does not just die. It shatters. It ceases to exist as a coherent body, cracking apart into an expanding field of rubble and debris that will eventually disperse into the void. Two-stage cyclonic torpedoes are extraordinarily rare. In one confirmed case, only 2 such weapons existed within an entire Imperial sector. Both of them were used in 928 of the 41st millennium, on the orders of Inquisitor Nathan Flintlock, to physically destroy the Necron tomb world of Seneschal, ensuring that the sleeping mechanical horrors beneath its surface would never awaken. It remains one of the very few confirmed uses of the planet-shattering variant, and the extreme scarcity of these weapons means that their deployment is reserved for only the most critical targets. The authority to order an exterminatus is restricted to the highest levels of Imperial power, and the oversight process, while imperfect, is more rigorous than many people expect. An Inquisitor of the Ordos has the absolute authority to order one at any time, under their own judgment, without requiring approval from anyone. That sounds terrifying, and it is, but there is a check on this power. The Ordo Excorium, a specialized division of the Inquisition that exists solely to review and manage exterminatus actions, maintains records showing that roughly 90% of Inquisitors who ordered even a single exterminatus were later stripped of their rank and their rosette. Several were declared outright heretics for authorizing the destruction of a world without sufficient justification. Chapter masters of the Adeptus Astartes have also ordered exterminatus actions under their own authority, though the legal standing for this remains a matter of debate in imperial circles. Lord High Admirals and Lord Commanders can also authorize the destruction of a world, though they rarely do so without inquisitorial support. Despite this oversight, exterminatus actions happen with a regularity that would be shocking in any other fictional setting. In a galaxy of 1,000,000 worlds facing simultaneous threats from chaos corruption, tyrannid invasion, genstealer infestation, Necron awakening, and a dozen other existential dangers, there are always planets that are deemed too far gone to save. Multiple exterminatus events per century are common, with periods of acute crisis seeing dozens of worlds sterilized in rapid succession, billions of lives sacrificed each time, entire cultures erased. Ecosystems that took millions of years to evolve reduced to bare rock in a matter of hours, all treated as regrettable but necessary. The cost of survival in a galaxy that wants humanity dead. Several famous worlds have been subjected to exterminatus or exterminatus-level devastation throughout imperial history, and each one tells its own terrible story. Nostramo, the lightless homeworld of the Night Lords, was destroyed on the orders of its own primarch, Conrad Curzay, who regarded his planet as beyond redemption. The Night Haunter ordered his own fleet to bombard the world from orbit, and the planet broke apart under the sustained barrage. It was an act that shocked even those who had grown accustomed to Curzay's brutality, not because of the scale of the destruction, but because of the cold finality with which it was carried out. Curzay did not agonize over the decision. He did not weep for his homeworld. He simply decided it needed to die and made it happen. Typhon Primaris was subjected to atmospheric incineration during the Third Aurelian Crusade. Its surface melted to glass by the plasma device of an atmospheric incinerator torpedo. Reports from the aftermath described the planet burning like a piece of amber in space, still glowing with residual heat a full month after the attack. The world had been deemed too far gone after chaos forces erupted from a warp anomaly called Van Grotha's Rapidity, overwhelming the Ultramarines' Second Company. Despite their best efforts to retake the world, Medusa IV met a similar fate, bombarded after falling to the forces of chaos. The planet Krieg famously survived multiple cyclonic torpedo strikes during its own civil war, though the strikes were on a much smaller scale than a standard exterminatus, and left the world a radioactive, perpetual winter wasteland. Despite the devastation, the people of Krieg survived in deep underground bunkers and continued fighting a brutal 500-year civil war. Today, Krieg produces some of the Imperium's most fanatically devoted soldiers, the Death Corps of Krieg, who are raised from birth to believe that their very existence is an act of penance for their ancestors' rebellion. And then there is Isstvan III itself, which was not subjected to cyclonic torpedoes, but to virus bombs, making it arguably the most significant exterminatus-level event in Imperial history, not because of the scale of destruction, which has been exceeded many times since, but because of what it represented: the first open act of treachery in the Horus Heresy, the first time the Imperium's weapons of planetary annihilation were turned inward against humanity's own defenders. There is something deeply, profoundly unsettling about the cyclonic torpedo. It is not a weapon of passion or fury. There is no rage behind it, no hatred, no desperate last stand. It is a bureaucratic decision. Forms are filed, authorities are consulted, a signature is given, and a world dies. That clinical, procedural approach to the murder of billions is what makes it so horrifying. The Imperium has reduced the death of entire civilizations to paperwork. Number 5. The Planet Killer. If the Imperium handles planetary destruction through cold, bureaucratic procedure, then the forces of chaos handle it with the subtlety and restraint you would expect from a faction literally powered by the screaming emotions of a hell dimension, which is to say, none at all. They built a ship with a gun big enough to crack a planet in half, pointed it at things, and pulled the trigger. That ship is the Planet Killer, and the gun is the Armageddon Gun. The Planet Killer is a chaos warship of truly immense proportions, measuring roughly 13.5 kilometers from bow to stern. It served as the flagship of Abaddon the Despoiler during his 12th Black Crusade, otherwise known as the Gothic War, and it remains one of the most feared vessels in the galaxy. The ship is covered in lance batteries, weapons arrays, torpedo launchers, and multiple overlapping layers of void shields and shield generators that make it extraordinarily difficult to bring down, even for a concentrated Imperial fleet. Its only significant weakness is its ponderous speed, a consequence of building an entire warship around a single colossal weapon system that takes up most of the vessel's internal volume. That weapon system is the Armageddon Gun, and the Armageddon Gun is, put simply, the most powerful directed energy weapon ever mounted on a mobile platform in the recorded history of the galaxy. Its exact nature remains unknown to Imperial science. The Adeptus Mechanicus has theorized that it channels the raw energy of the warp itself, which would explain why they believe the planet killer could only have been constructed within the Eye of Terror, where the laws of physics are more like suggestions than rules. What is known is that when the Armageddon Gun fires, it produces a sustained beam of energy of immeasurable power that can bore through miles of planetary crust, penetrate deep into the mantle, and destabilize the geological structure of an entire world. An eyewitness account from the destruction of the cardinal world of Sevaven, the Armageddon Gun's first recorded use, described the beam as lasting for approximately half an hour. Half an hour of sustained fire that seared through the crust and opened a wound in the planet the size of a continent. Within an hour of the bombardment beginning, 14 billion people were dead, and the planet was breaking apart. Continents split, the sky burned, the world cracked into pieces like an egg hit with a hammer. The psychological impact of the planet killer was almost as devastating as its physical firepower. Word of Sevaven's destruction spread through the Gothic sector like wildfire, and entire star systems surrendered to Abaddon without a fight, rather than face the same fate. When the planet killer arrived at the system of Savior, the planet's Imperial commander took one look at what was pointing at his world and immediately agreed to produce warships for the Chaos Fleet, because the alternative was watching 11 billion people die. The Armageddon Gun did not even need to fire. Its reputation alone was enough to shatter the enemy's will to resist. The origins of the planet killer are shrouded in mystery and contradictory accounts. One version says that Abaddon discovered the half-constructed hull of an unknown vessel in an ancient shipyard, drifting through the warp deep within the Eye of Terror. His warpsmiths examined the ship, marveled at its dark design, and promised that when completed, it would be the doom of worlds. Another version says that Abaddon toppled the ruler of a renegade forge world called Bargi IV and forced the world's tech priests to follow him into the Eye of Terror, where they began constructing the planet killer from scratch, using plans recovered from a Halo world called Lana Morgstein. Whatever its true origin, the Adeptus Mechanicus has concluded that the planet killer could only have been fabricated within the Eye of Terror, as its construction violates physical laws that should be inviolable in normal space. The ship does not resemble any Imperial design. It does not follow any known pattern or template. Its systems are a nightmarish hybrid of conventional technology and demonic corruption. Several demons were bound into the vessel by Abaddon's chief sorcerer Zarafistan, reducing the crew requirements and giving the ship a malevolent, semi-sentient quality. Crew members who served aboard the planet killer reported hearing whispers in the corridors, seeing shadows moving in empty rooms, and feeling the ship shift and groan around them as if it were alive, which, in a sense, it was. The planet killer was as much a creature of the warp as it was a machine of war, a demon engine on a scale normally reserved for titans, stretched out to the proportions of a capital ship. The ship was also protected by 4 layers of void shields, an excessive number even for a vessel of its size, which made it extraordinarily difficult to damage with conventional weapons. Its hull plating was thick enough to shrug off all but the most concentrated lance fire, and its numerous weapons batteries and torpedo launchers gave it formidable secondary armament for dealing with escort vessels and fighters. The Armageddon Gun itself was composed of 7 massive energy projectors arranged in a tight cluster at the ship's prow, which could focus their combined output into a single devastating beam or spread it across a wider arc for engaging multiple targets. The ship's only real weakness was its ponderous speed, a consequence of dedicating so much of its internal volume to the Armageddon Gun and its power systems. During the Gothic War, the planet killer carved a path of destruction through the sector. After Sevavan and Savior, it destroyed all 3 moons of the hive world Stranavar, creating devastating meteor impacts that wrecked the planet below. When Abaddon left the ship under the command of his subordinate Malefica Arkham, Arkham used it to destroy 2 of the 5 planets in the Arimaspia system before getting ideas above his station and trying to carve out his own little empire with it. That plan ended when 4 Luna-class cruisers from Battle Group Omega caught the planet killer operating without escorts and hammered it with torpedo salvos fired at extreme range, exploiting the ship's one weakness, its ponderous speed, to stay out of range of the Armageddon gun while pounding it relentlessly. The planet killer was reportedly destroyed, but like everything associated with Abaddon and the forces of chaos, the planet killer refuses to stay dead. Multiple sightings were reported during the 13th Black Crusade, and Abaddon himself has acknowledged that the ship remains in active service somewhere in the galaxy, though he considers the Vengeful Spirit, Horus's legendary old flagship, to be the true flagship of the Black Legion. The current whereabouts of the planet killer are unknown, though Imperial intelligence suggests it may be lurking somewhere in the Imperium Nihilus, the dark half of the galaxy severed from the light of the Astronomicon by the Great Rift. Word of its presence in that benighted region would spread slowly if at all, which is probably exactly the point. Number 6. The Blackstone Fortresses. They are ancient beyond any meaningful frame of reference. They were old before the Imperium existed. They were old before the Eldar Empire rose and fell. They may have been old before the majority of stars currently burning in the Milky Way had even ignited. Known to the Eldar as the Talismans of Vol, named after the smith god of Eldar mythology, who is said to have forged them, the Blackstone Fortresses are among the most powerful weapons ever constructed by any civilization in the history of the galaxy. And the worst part is, nobody is entirely sure who built them. 6 Blackstone Fortresses were discovered by the Imperium in the Gothic sector sometime around the 31st millennium. Each one was staggeringly vast, roughly the size of a small planet, constructed from a mysterious super-hardened material that Imperial scientists would eventually call Noctilith, more commonly known as Blackstone. This material defied every attempt at analysis. The Mechanicus could not identify its composition, could not determine how it was manufactured, and could not replicate it. The structures themselves possessed some form of innate artificial intelligence, had technology that was completely unlike anything used by the present-day Eldar, despite being attributed to an Eldar deity, and were equipped with apparently inertialess propulsion systems that allowed planetoid-sized structures to move through space with an ease that should have been physically impossible. For centuries, the Imperium treated the dormant Blackstone Fortresses as convenient real estate. The Adeptus Mechanicus retrofitted them with Imperial weapons batteries, life support systems, and hangar bays, turning each one into a primary naval base for Battlefleet Gothic. The weapons batteries they added were powerful enough to exceed the firepower of any ship in the Imperial Navy, and the fortress's inherent structural integrity made them practically impregnable. It was a good deal. The Imperium got 6 invincible space stations for the price of some retrofit work and a lot of head-scratching about how they actually functioned. But the true purpose of the Blackstone Fortresses was something far beyond anything the Imperium had imagined. According to Eldar mythology, the fortresses were created during the War in Heaven, the apocalyptic conflict between the Old Ones and the Necrons that raged across the galaxy millions of years before any modern civilization existed. The Ctan, the star gods who served as the Necrons' masters and weapons, were essentially omnipotent within the material universe. They could extinguish stars, they could bend reality itself, but they had one critical weakness: the warp. The Immaterium was anathema to the Catan. They could not exist within it, and they were extremely vulnerable to psychic energy drawn from it. The Blackstone Fortresses were the answer to that vulnerability. Each one was equipped with a warp cannon, a weapon that could tear open a rift between real space and the Immaterium and channel a concentrated blast of pure psychic energy directly at a target. The power of a single warp cannon was enough to scour a planet clean, but the real horror emerged when multiple fortresses were linked together, combining their beams into a single devastating assault. During the Gothic War, Abaddon the Despoiler demonstrated this capability with terrifying clarity. The Despoiler had learned of the fortress's existence sometime in the 40th millennium, guided by the visions of his chief sorcerer Zarafistan, to an Eldar Crone world where he read an ancient prophecy that told of their location and their power. From that moment, the capture of the Blackstone Fortresses became Abaddon's primary objective. Every battle, every raid, every fleet engagement in the Gothic War was ultimately in service of this one goal: getting his hands on the fortresses and learning how to turn them on. Using mysterious alien artifacts called the Hand of Darkness and the Eye of Night, Abaddon was able to remotely activate the dormant weapon systems of the Blackstone Fortresses and seize control of them. The process was gradual. Early in the war, the fortresses showed only hints of their true capabilities, generating strange energy readings and exhibiting behaviors that baffled the Imperial crews still stationed aboard them. But as the war progressed and Abaddon gained more complete control, the fortresses began to demonstrate their true purpose, and the results were catastrophic. 2 Blackstone fortresses working in concert completely scoured the surface of the planet Fularis II, stripping it of all life and atmosphere in a single coordinated blast. The beam they produced was described as a devastating rip in the fabric of real space, a concentrated eruption of psychic energy drawn directly from the immaterium. Nothing on the surface survived. Nothing could have survived. The defense installations, the military bases, the civilian populations, all of it was wiped away in an instant by a weapon that made Exterminatus look gentle by comparison. 3 Blackstone fortresses linked together caused the star Tarantis to go supernova, annihilating its entire star system in a cataclysm that was visible across the sector. A star, an entire sun billions of years before its natural death, forced into a violent detonation by the combined warp cannons of 3 ancient space stations. Every planet orbiting Tarantis was consumed. Every moon, every station, every ship that was too close to escape. The death toll is not even recorded, because there was no way to count it. Everything in the system simply ceased to exist. By the end of the Gothic War, Abaddon had captured 2 of the 6 known Blackstone fortresses, while the other 4 were destroyed. One of the 2 captured fortresses was given as a gift by Abaddon to Huron Blackheart, the Chaos Lord of the Red Corsairs, to purchase his loyalty for the coming 13th Black Crusade. The other, designated the Will of Eternity, was kept by Abaddon for a much grander purpose. During the 13th Black Crusade, the Will of Eternity was deployed against the fortress world of Cadia. The fortress's weapons nearly destroyed Cadia outright before they were crippled by a combined assault from the Phalanx, the Imperial Fist's ancient star fortress, and a boarding party of space wolves who managed to bring down its shields from the inside. But Abaddon was not finished. With the fortress's weapons disabled, the Despoiler simply drove the Will of Eternity into Cadia's surface, using the planetoid-sized construct as a kinetic impactor. The impact shattered the Cadian pylons, those ancient Necron devices that had been holding the barrier between real space and the warp intact for millions of years. Without the pylons, the fabric of reality tore, the warp poured through, Cadia broke apart. The Great Rift opened across the galaxy, a screaming wound in reality that split the Imperium in 2 and plunged half of human space into darkness. 1 Blackstone fortress, used not as a weapon, but as a rock, dropped onto a single world, and the consequences reshaped the entire galaxy. There are more Blackstone fortresses out there. At least 7 more have been confirmed or suspected to exist in various locations across the galaxy. The 7th, discovered in the western reaches shortly after the Great Rift opened, is not dormant. It is active. It appears to act on its own accord, drawing ships from across the galaxy into its orbit and consuming them. What lies within its hidden vaults is one of the most pressing mysteries in the current era of the Imperium. Number 7. The World Engine. In 912 of the 41st millennium, deep within the Necron tomb world of Borsis, something changed. The Necron overlord who had ruled the world for millions of years was overthrown in a coup by his own vizier. The new ruler had grand plans, and he had the means to carry them out. Because Borsis was not just a tomb world, it was a warship, a planet-sized warship. The Imperium called it the World Engine, and when it appeared in the Vidar subsector in 926 of the 41st millennium, it began doing exactly what its name suggested: destroying worlds. The World Engine was armed with an array of Gauss projectors capable of scorching entire planets clean of all life. It moved through the sector like a slow-moving apocalypse, its first victims being the agricultural worlds of Gaius Prime and Gaius Tertio. The Imperial response was massive. The entire sector fleet, task forces from 15 separate Space Marine chapters, everything the Imperium could throw at the problem was thrown at it. None of it worked. The World Engine's void shields were impervious to every weapon the Imperium possessed. Drop pods bounced off, boarding torpedoes were repelled, teleportation beams were scrambled. 12 separate attempts to breach the shields all ended in catastrophic failure. A third of the entire sector fleet was destroyed. The World Engine was heading for Varvan Karst, a hive world of 21 billion people. The assembled Imperial commanders were preparing to abandon the sector when Chapter Master Arthur Amrad of the Astral Knights proposed a plan everyone else thought was suicidal. He would ram his battle barge, the Tempestus, directly into the World Engine's void shields and deploy his entire chapter onto the surface. 772 Astral Knights fought on the surface of the World Engine for over 100 hours. They destroyed every flux generator, weapon forge, and command node they could find, fighting against tens of thousands of Necron warriors. The Necrons could phase out and be repaired. The Astral Knights could not replace a single loss. One by one, they fell. Finally, when only Amrad and 5 battle brothers remained, they reached a massive tomb complex at the World Engine's heart and detonated melter charges that brought down the void shields. The Imperial Navy's waiting ships finally opened fire with cyclonic torpedoes, and the World Engine was destroyed. A permanent shrine was raised on the planet of Safehold, containing statues of all 772 fallen warriors. To this day, volunteers from the dozen chapters who fought alongside the Astral Knights take turns guarding that shrine. Number 8. The Talisman of 7 Hammers. Deep beneath the Imperial Palace on Holy Terra, buried within the mechanisms of the Golden Throne, there sits a device that almost nobody knows about. It was built by Vulkan, Primarch of the Salamanders, under the direct guidance of the Emperor, and its sole purpose is to destroy Terra if the Emperor dies. The Talisman of 7 Hammers is a dead man's switch. If the Golden Throne fails, the talisman activates and incinerates all of Terra, the entire planet, denied to the forces of chaos forever. The backstory is critical. During the Great Crusade, the Emperor had been working on a secret project beneath the Imperial Palace, an attempt to create a human-controlled section of the webway. When Magnus the Red attempted to warn the Emperor about Horus's betrayal using his psychic powers, he accidentally shattered the protective wards. Demons poured through. The Emperor was forced to sit on the Golden Throne personally to hold the breach sealed. That is where he has been for 10,000 years, trapped on a failing machine, holding shut a door that chaos is constantly pushing against. If the Emperor dies, the daemons pour through, and Terra becomes a daemon world. The talisman prevents this by ensuring nothing remains to corrupt. Vulkan traveled through the webway to reach Terra, guided unknowingly by the Emperor himself. When he arrived, the Emperor revealed the talisman's purpose and told Vulkan he must oversee the device precisely because he was the most reluctant to use the weapons he forged. Vulkan installed the talisman and stood guard at the Eternity Gate. During the Siege of Terra, Vulkan used the talisman to slay the Great Unclean One Agalba, giving the daemon a true death. He later used it against Magnus the Red, destroying the daemon Primarch's physical form. But it is the talisman's primary function that haunts the lore. The Golden Throne is failing. The tech priests cannot maintain it forever, and somewhere in the dark, the talisman waits, patient, silent, ready. Number 9. The Celestial Orrery. Hidden at the heart of the hollow Necron crown world of Thanatos, the Celestial Orrery is a web of holograms and living necrodermis that maps every single star in the Milky Way galaxy, each one represented by a tiny pinprick of glowing light. Crafted by the Orrery dynasty before the War in Heaven, the Orrery is directly connected to the galaxy it represents. Snuff out one of those lights, and the physical star goes supernova, millennia before its natural time. Every world in that system, gone. With a single gesture, the rulers of Thanatos could destroy any star system in the galaxy. But every star destroyed upsets the fundamental forces of creation, requiring thousands of years of micromanagement to correct. The royal court of Thanatos sees themselves as gardeners, pruning the galaxy with precision. But not every Necron shares their restraint, and endless wars rage across Thanatos to prevent the Orrery from falling into careless hands. During the 13th Black Crusade, Trazyn the Infinite traveled to Thanatos to learn about the Cadian pylons. He later brought that knowledge to the defense of Cadia itself, teaching Belisarius Cawl how to activate the pylon network. The Orrery is not a weapon in any traditional sense. It is a star map with a delete function, a galaxy-wide remote control, and the only thing keeping it from being misused is the judgment of immortal robots who gave up their souls 65 million years ago. Number 10. The Breath of the Gods. And now we arrive at the final entry, the weapon that makes everything else look manageable, not because it can destroy a planet or kill a star, though it can do both, but because the Breath of the Gods operates on a scale where misuse threatens to unravel reality itself. The Breath of the Gods, known to the Eldar as the Tsawi Neag, is an ancient stand device that feeds its power demands by reaching across time, siphoning energy from the hearts of dozens of stars simultaneously, from the past, present, and future. This temporal siphoning gives it effectively unlimited power, constrained only by the user's ability to manage the consequences. In the Forges of Mars trilogy, the rogue Archmagos Telok attempted to use the device. He had combined Citan technology with Hrud temporal manipulation systems to create a hybrid machine, but he did not understand what he was doing. The Eldar who encountered the device were terrified. They explained that it was never intended to be used by a species with a linear grasp of time. Stars were dying before their time. Others were failing to ignite. Space-time itself was beginning to collapse, creating a temporal black hole that threatened the entire universe. The original purpose of the Breath of the Gods was as a harvesting engine for the Titan, designed to channel stellar energy directly to the star gods. The Necrons planned to use it to build bridges between galaxies. At the height of the War in Heaven, they used the energy of the living universe itself to power the weapons that shattered the Catan. What puts the Breath of the Gods at the top of this list is the existential threat it represents. Every other weapon destroys things that currently exist. The Breath of the Gods can destroy things retroactively. It can erase things from history. It can collapse the timeline of the entire galaxy if the user does not know what they are doing. And the only beings who ever knew how to operate it safely were the Satan, now shattered into fragments, and the Necrons, most of whom are still waking up with varying degrees of sanity. The Necrons are waking up. Across the galaxy, tomb worlds are stirring. Some of these dynasties are rational, others are broken, their leaders driven mad by 65 million years of sleep. And somewhere out there, buried under the dust of a world that has not seen sunlight in millions of years, there might be another Breath of the Gods, waiting to be found, waiting for the wrong person to push the wrong button and tear a hole in the timeline that can never ever be repaired. And on that cheerful note, we come to the end of our countdown. 10 weapons. 10 instruments of annihilation that span the full spectrum of destruction that Warhammer 40,000 has to offer, from the intimate, biological horror of the virus bomb to the time-shattering cosmic scale of the Breath of the Gods. From cursed daggers that toppled empires to planet-sized fortresses that killed stars. From hand-thrown grenades that erase you from existence to dead man's switches designed to destroy the homeworld of all humanity as a final act of defiance against the darkness. What makes this list so disturbing is not just the power of these weapons individually, but what they say about the galaxy as a whole. In a universe where the destruction of an entire planet is considered a bureaucratic procedure, where the killing of billions is treated as a regrettable but acceptable cost of doing business, these weapons represent the upper limit of what happens when civilizations are pushed to their absolute breaking point. Every weapon on this list exists because someone, somewhere, decided that the threat they were facing was so severe that nothing less than total annihilation was an acceptable response. The virus bomb exists because humanity needed a way to sterilize entire worlds that had fallen to corruption. The cyclonic torpedo exists because the virus bomb was not thorough enough. The planet killer exists because the forces of chaos wanted to make the Imperium's method of planetary destruction look slow and inefficient. The Blackstone Fortresses exist because an ancient race needed weapons that could kill star gods. The Celestial Orrery exists because the Necrons wanted to be able to rearrange the galaxy itself, like furniture in a room. And the breath of the gods exists because the Catan needed to eat, and individual stars were not enough to satisfy their hunger. Each escalation follows logically from the one before it. Each weapon is a response to a threat that the previous generation of weapons could not handle, and there is no sign that this escalation is slowing down. The Great Rift has torn the galaxy in half. The Tyranids are pressing in from the galactic rim. The Necrons are waking up in numbers not seen since the war in heaven. The forces of chaos are more active and more powerful than they have been since the Horus Heresy itself. Every major faction is being pushed toward the kind of desperation that leads to someone reaching for the biggest gun in the cabinet. In the grim darkness of the far future, there is only war. And in a universe where war is the only constant, where every faction is fighting for survival against threats that could snuff them out at any moment, the weapons keep getting bigger, more terrible, more final. These are not the weapons of a galaxy at peace. These are the weapons of a galaxy that has been locked in a death spiral for over 10,000 years and shows absolutely no signs of slowing down. Every civilization, from the crumbling Imperium to the scheming forces of chaos, to the awakening Necron dynasties, to the dying Eldar, possesses the ability to inflict destruction on a scale that makes the combined nuclear arsenals of modern Earth look like party poppers. And they use these capabilities regularly, because in Warhammer 40,000, the stakes are always extinction, and the margin for error is always zero. The real question is not whether any of these weapons will be used again. They will be. The real question is which one goes off next. Whether it will be a desperate inquisitor authorizing an exterminatus on a world that cannot be saved, or a chaos warlord pointing the Armageddon gun at another defenseless planet, or a Necron overlord reaching into the Celestial Orrery and snuffing out a star because it was in his way, or something worse, something nobody has thought of yet, something buried in a tomb that has not been opened in 65 million years, waiting for the wrong person to stumble inside and start pushing buttons they do not understand. Whatever it is, one thing is certain. In the 41st millennium, the galaxy's most dangerous weapons are not relics of the past. They are still in play, still armed, still aimed at something. And the people holding the triggers are running out of reasons not to pull them. So which of these weapons terrifies you the most? Which one lives rent-free in your head when you think about the sheer scale of destruction that the Warhammer 40,000 galaxy casually throws around? Tell us in the comments. And while you are there, make sure to subscribe and ring the notification bell so you never miss out on more lore.